What is up, all my bee people? Greg the Bee Guy here, and today what we're going to talk about is day one beekeeping, or I can even say pre-day one beekeeping. On this channel, what I like to do is I like to focus a lot of my videos and a lot of my advice toward beginner beekeepers and intermediate beekeepers. And there's a couple reasons for this. First off, like I've always said, I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, consider myself an advanced beekeeper. I've been doing this for 6 years, and in that 6 years, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of help from a lot of great people around me. I've always said I have 3 or 4 or 5 different mentors that have helped myself and my business partner, Craig, get Angry Bees Apiary to where it is today. So I try to maybe help newer beekeepers and like lower intermediate beekeepers not make the same kind of mistakes that I have made through the years, and maybe you can get a little bit further than I have in the same amount of time. So today we want to talk about starting your first apiary and really the pluses and minuses of having one hive versus multiple hives, and why you should never, ever, 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 if I can stress that enough, you should never ever really have only one hive unless, let me caveat that by saying, unless the situation is where you just don't have the room, you don't have the space, or you're in kind of an environment where if you have a ton of bees, flying around your backyard or whatever, it is going to cause a dangerous situation, maybe for your neighbors or for pets or kids in the whatever it is. If you're not in that situation, I would really, really recommend that you start with a minimum of 2 hives. And really my recommendation is to start with 3. And we're going to talk in this video 4 reasons why you should do that. And you guys know me as a former Marine. I really like my keywords. I really like my bullet points. I really like, kind of making everything very, very simple and very, very stupid so that everybody can understand it. And that's what we're going to do in this video. So guys, without further ado, we're going to talk about the 4 reasons why you should never, ever, ever start your apiary with only one hive. Greg the Bee Guy, LFG. Redundancy. So what is redundancy? Redundancy really is, I guess in layman's terms, it is having a situation where if something, let's just say catastrophic happens, that you have other things there to pick up the slack. So again, military uses the word redundancy a lot. Aircraft, if you think about when you fly in an airplane, that airplane has a lot of redundant systems, meaning if one system breaks, there are more systems to take over the load for that system that broke. So engines, hydraulics, electric, stuff like that. Well, it works kind of the same way when we talk about beehives and beekeeping. So when you start beekeeping and you have one hive and something happens to that hive, especially if it's later in the season. Now, if it's early on in the season, like let's say it's late May or early June, there's enough time for you to recover from that. So let's just say your hive dies, your hive absconds, something happens, a bearer comes in and knocks your hive over and your hive is destroyed, and you have to try to recover from that. If it's early enough in the season, you could contact somebody, you could buy another hive. Local beekeepers will probably at that point still have nukes available for you, that you are not just SOL, right? But if you get into a situation where it's August or late August or September and something happens to your hive, you are now completely out of it until next spring. Now, I am specifically talking about us up here up north in Pennsylvania. You guys that are further south where you get a longer season, that maybe it might not be the same for you, but I know us northern beekeepers up here, once it gets to about August, once that summer solstice kind of comes and goes and the bees start making their way to winter, and the queen starts laying bees of winter physiology and all this other stuff, it is very, very hard to get a hive that you start in August or September to make it through winter. Because winter time for us is just you know, pretty bitter up here a little bit, and a lot of times, and we do have some losses through winter. So the number one thing is, if you have 3 hives, let's just say you have 2 hives, you know, obviously if one hive dies, you have another hive there to continue on. And if it is early enough, maybe you could even do a split to make sure that other hive is back. Also, you know, if you have 3 hives, then you're able to withstand pretty much anything. So you have 1 hive die, you have 2 hives, you have 1 hive die, tongue twister there. You have 1 hive die, you have 2 more hives that you can use to continue through the season, and also to keep those bees going. If you only have 1 and your hive dies, you're SOL. So the first one, guys, redundancy. So guys, number 2 is sustainability. What are we talking about in beekeeping when it comes to sustainability? Well, what we really mean is kind of going back to that very first example of, if it's late July or early August and you have a hive that just collapses for whatever reason. Could be something you did to it, could be simply that the bees just weren't strong to begin with, and that colony starts to collapse. So you notice there's not a lot of activity in that colony, you notice that things just aren't going well, then you can use your other hives to help save that hive. Now, these are a little bit more advanced items. And when I say advanced, most intermediate beekeepers, even beginner beekeepers, understand that you can take a frame of brood and you can move that frame of brood from one colony to another without too much problem. So as long as you have, all the levels of eggs on there, which means you have an egg, you have pupa, you have larvae, you have the whole 9 yards, then the bees will not only use that brood to make more bees to keep the colony sustained, but then they'll be able to use those that to make themselves a new queen if they have to. So when we're talking about sustainability, guys, if you only have 1 hive, you may be looking around on social media for another queen, or you may actually be reaching out to maybe a beekeeping buddy that you know, and hey, do you have a frame of brood that I could come grab off you? Because I have a dying hive and we got no brood in there for whatever reason, but you are able to get that from your other hives. So guys, number 2, sustainability, just the ability to keep your hives going in situations where they would normally just die out if you only had 1 hive. Number 2, sustainability. So guys, number 3 on the list is comparability. What is comparability? It is just simply being able to take item A, whatever item A is, and item B, no matter what it is, and compare the 2 together. When we're talking about beekeeping, we're talking about bee colonies, right? So if you look down this row of hives that we have here, we have a nook and we have a couple other hives, and you can kind of tell that there are different levels of activity going all the way down this first set of hives. So we can tell just by looking at the landing board and looking at some other things when it comes to the activity in front of the hive, whether or not we have a problem in that hive. So as a beginner beekeepers, if you only have 1 hive, you may not know until it's too late that there is a problem with that hive, because to you, no matter what that hive looks like, it looks normal to you. Whereas if you had 2 hives and you said, okay, colony A is real busy and there's a lot of bees on the landing board and they're bringing pollen in on their legs, and they may even be bearded on front of the hive. If it's in the summertime, like it is up here in Pennsylvania, they may be bearded on the hive. And hive B, colony B, there's 1 or 2 bees going in every 10 seconds. They're not bringing in any pollen on their feet. And so you can say, okay, I definitely have a problem with colony B. Again, you may not know what that problem is, but at least you can start your investigation. So do your hive inspections, maybe call your mentor, reach out, contact me. There's a lot of ways that you can ask people for help social media, if there's Facebook groups or whatever. Hey, I have this problem. I'm only seeing X amount of bees outside my hive, and at least you have somewhere to start. So again, as a beginner beekeeper, one colony, bad, because you can't compare with any other colony. So 2 colonies, better. 3 colonies, real good, because now you have 3 different colonies that you can compare together. So guys, number 3, comparability. So guys, before we get to number 1, if you've made it this far in the video, as always, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video. I love helping out you beginner beekeepers and you intermediate beekeepers out there. Leave me some comments, let me know what you think, and let me know what you would put on your list for the top reasons that you should never only buy one hive. So guys, number 1 on the list is longevity. Longevity. Now, what we want to talk about when it comes to bee colonies, using the word longevity, is really getting those colonies to survive year over year. Just to take an example of what happened to us last year. So going into winter, we had around 50 colonies, give or take. We had our bulk of our colonies up here, and we have 2 other offsite apiaries that have a couple hives at them. So we had a total of about 50 colonies last year, and we lost pretty much about 50% of those colonies. And we tried everything. We fed, we tried some different things, and it was just a bad winter, which I heard a lot of beekeepers, especially in the north and the west, had a little bit of a rough winter. Now, that was our worst winter. We've had some really good winters where we've got through with 90% of our colonies, 80% of our colonies, but losing 50% of our colonies was kind of tough. So we really had to go into a rebuild this year. So as a beginner beekeeper, what do you want to look at, or what are your big things when it comes to going into winter? Now, this does really kind of apply more to us up here in the north than it does to you southern beekeepers, because you guys obviously have different things that you have to deal with. However, the winters aren't as bad in the south as they are in the north. So we're specifically talking about like North Carolina and above is where we really have to start worrying about winter die-offs. So when you have one colony, and let's just say overall you have a 30% chance of losing that colony in the wintertime, give or take, 20 or a 30% chance. Now you have a 1 in 3 chance that you're going to lose your colony. And if you lose your colony over the wintertime, you got to start all the way from scratch again in the spring. And if it's a situation where you're ordering your bees or something like that, a lot of places require you to order bees. And again, beginner beekeepers kind of keep this in mind, that a lot of places you're going to order your bees from, you're going to be required to order them before the season starts. So they're going to want you to order them in January, February, maybe even December or November of the prior year. So right now for 2026, you're going to be ordering bees in 2025 right now for 2026. So again, one hive, you have a high probability, or at least a medium probability that you may lose that hive. If you have 3 hives or even 2 hives, all you basically do is you stretch those odds out, and you kind of take the chance over 3 that at least one of them is going to make it. Because if you can just get 1 through, then you can do some of the things that we talked about earlier and in other videos. You can do splits, you can do queens, you can do a bunch of different things once you get that hive through winter. But the problem is sometimes is getting those hives through winter, especially as beginner beekeepers, because we don't know a lot of stuff, especially like we did in the very beginning. Did you do your mite treatments at the right time? Did you even need to do a mite treatment? Are you feeding correctly, or did you not feed at all? If you didn't feed, did you leave enough resources in that hive for those bees to survive throughout the winter? So there's a lot of questions that need answered there. But just for us and just for this video today, just remember, number 1 is longevity. You got to have them bees get through wintertime. That is the key to being a successful long-term year-over-year beekeeper. So as always, for For those of you guys that have made it this far in the video, we love to give that bonus tip out there just as a thank you for staying around and watching that whole video. So your bonus tip for today of the top 5 reasons why you should never ever start your apiary with only one hive is their bees. Come on, how can you just buy one? Well, that is kind of a little joke, but in all seriousness, if you have multiple hives, so if you start with 3 hives, when you're talking about becoming comfortable and your anxiety level is going to go down, you're going to not worry about getting stung as much, the more you can work your bees. So if you have one hive, you're going to do a certain amount of hive inspections, you're going to be in your apiary a certain amount of times, and yes, you, just like we talked about in a prior video, you are going to get stung at some point. As a matter of fact, doing this video today, the bees have been so gentle up here in the apiary, and I come up, I'm doing the video today and I do get ran off. I didn't get stung, but I did get run off. I'm gonna maybe put that in the bloopers section because he hit me right in the face and ran me off pretty good. But it is definitely worth getting stung a little bit at the very beginning, because once you kind of get over that fear, then it makes you, it takes that anxiety level down of dealing with your bees. And I can remember, I'll tell you a real quick story. When I was first in this, me and Craig were working a hive, and how I used to go into hives in the very beginning was kind of how I'm dressed now, except I would wear a veil and a hat. But I was in one of the hives, I was working a hive, it was a very calm hive, and I got stung right between the fingers right here, and it kind of startled me because I hadn't been stung by that hive before, so it kind of startled me, and I had the frame up, and my initial reaction was, because at this point we had only been doing it, maybe 4 or 5 months at this point, and it just startled me, and I ended up dropping the frame. Thank goodness nothing happened, there wasn't any problems, I didn't kill the queen or anything, but now that I've been stung a number of times, it definitely takes the anxiety level down of getting stung. So the more you can do hive inspections, again, if you have one hive, you're going to do a certain amount, multiply that by 3. If you're going to get stung a couple times, if you have one hive, multiply that by 3. So in the end, you become a better beekeeper because you have more than one hive. Now, obviously, like we talked about at the beginning, if you're in a situation where you just can't have more than one hive because of room or neighbors or ordinances or whatever that situation is, then we get it. But if you can at all swing it and pull it off, I know it's a little bit more money, it's a little bit more time, it's a little bit more aggravation, but in the long run, it is going to make you a better and more successful beekeeper to have more than one hive. So what does Greg the Bee Guy recommend? Get those 3 hives and become a great beekeeper. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, like, share, comment. Let me know what you think. Greg the Bee Guy, LFG, signing off. I'll talk to you soon. We have another couple smaller apiaries around the area.
God, please, no! 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 No!